Something just happened in Cleveland that might have quietly decided the future of the Browns' quarterback room. And it didn't come from a coach, a press release, or a depth chart leak. It came from the most powerful voice inside that locker room. And if you read between the lines, the message was loud. When your franchise defensive superstar steps in front of a microphone and starts talking about who should be the guy at quarterback, that's not casual commentary, that's a signal, a very intentional one. And fans are now connecting the dots because what was said publicly does not fully match what the coaching staff has been repeating. On paper, the Browns are still calling this a quarterback competition. Neutral language, safe language, the kind of language teams use when they're buying time. But the tone coming from player leadership sounds very different, more decisive, more directional, and way less political. And when leadership voices start sounding more certain than the official messaging, that's when things get interesting. Now add fuel to that moment: rising rookie buzz, Pro Bowl flashes, growing fan momentum, and a veteran contract situation that complicates everything. And suddenly this isn't just a depth chart discussion anymore. This is a franchise identity pivot happening in real time. There's also a wave of online speculation right now. Reports, fan theories, and media chatter are all circling the same question. Has the locker room already chosen its quarterback before the organization is ready to say it out loud? Nobody inside the building is going to confirm that directly, but sometimes you don't need confirmation when the clues stack up. In this video, we're going to break down exactly what was said, why it matters more than people think, how teams use competition language strategically, and what signs usually appear right before a QB decision becomes unofficially official. Because if you listen closely, the decision might not be coming later. It might already be here. What made this moment explode wasn't just that a star player spoke, it's how he spoke. The wording mattered, the confidence mattered, and the lack of hesitation mattered most. When a franchise defensive leader was asked directly about the Browns' quarterback situation, this could have gone the usual way: safe answer, neutral tone. We trust the coaches. Best man wins, standard locker room script. That's what normally happens in these interviews. Veterans protect the room. They avoid headlines. They don't pick sides publicly. But that's not what happened here. Instead, the response centered directly on the young quarterback getting his shot, not as a maybe, not as a distant possibility, but as the focus of what comes next. The phrasing leaned forward, not sideways. It pointed to direction, not uncertainty. That's why fans and media immediately locked in on it. And let's be careful and precise here, because context matters. He didn't issue a formal declaration or name a starter on behalf of the coaching staff, but the tone strongly suggested belief, expectation, and internal momentum. And when comments like that come from a locker room cornerstone, they carry weight far beyond a typical soundbite. There's been a lot of buzz online since the clip circulated. Reports claim the locker room energy is shifting. Fans are speculating that leadership voices are aligning behind one direction. To be clear, that remains unverified insider chatter, but the reaction itself tells you how powerful the moment felt. In NFL culture, players rarely stick their necks out on QB hierarchy unless they already sense where things are heading. Quarterback politics are delicate. Veterans know that, which makes public confidence statements stand out even more. It also creates pressure, the good kind and the dangerous kind. Because once a leadership figure expresses belief in a young quarterback, expectations accelerate. The runway gets shorter, the spotlight gets hotter. And that leads directly to the next layer of this story. Because while player leadership sounded decisive, the coaching message has sounded very different. And that contrast is where the real drama begins. Here, where the story takes a sharp turn. Because while locker room voices are sounding confident, the coaching tone has been far more cautious. Publicly, the message around Shedeur Sanders has been controlled, measured, and deliberately non-committal. Words like competition, evaluation, and open battle keep getting repeated. No early coronation, no official QB1 label, just process talk. And that's not accidental. NFL coaching staffs almost never hand a starting title to a young quarterback in February soundbites, even when the internal plan is already leaning that direction. Why? Because once a coach names a starter too early, three problems hit instantly. First, veteran contract politics explode. If a high-paid veteran is still on the roster, declaring a rookie the starter too soon creates front office friction and agent drama. Second, motivation leverage disappears. Coaches like being able to say, "Nothing is guaranteed, earn it." It keeps practice intensity high and prevents complacency. Third, media pressure multiplies overnight. The moment a rookie is declared the guy, every throw in camp becomes a headline. So when coaches say he'll have to compete, that doesn't always mean the race is truly 50-50. Sometimes it means the decision is 80-20, but they want the environment to stay sharp and controlled. There's also another layer here that fans often overlook: organizational risk management. If you publicly anoint a young QB and he struggles early, the narrative flips from development to failure in a heartbeat. But if you say it was a competition, you buy patience and flexibility. Reports and fan chatter suggest the internal evaluation trend is positive. But again, that's still speculative. No official depth chart declaration exists yet. And until pads go on, teams protect optionality like gold. But here, the tension point. When player leadership energy and coaching caution start sounding different, fans read between the lines. And what fans think they're seeing right now is momentum building faster than the script allows. And the next piece of evidence that fueled that belief didn't come from a press conference. It came from the Pro Bowl stage. Now let's talk about the moment that really poured gasoline on this entire conversation, the Pro Bowl appearance. Because whether people want to admit it or not, that event shifted perception fast. When Shedeur Sanders stepped onto that field during Pro Bowl week, the expectations were mixed. Some fans were excited. Some analysts were skeptical. Others brushed it off as just another exhibition environment that doesn't really prove anything. And to be fair, Pro Bowl formats are lighter, faster, and not the same as regular season football. That part is true. But here, what made it matter anyway? It wasn't just the stat line. It was the composure, the timing, the decisiveness, the way he processed reads quickly and delivered the ball without hesitation. You could see the rhythm. You could see the confidence. You could see receivers trusting the ball would arrive where it should. Those traits translate in any format. Even critics had to admit the ball placement looked clean, the mechanics looked controlled, and the tempo didn't look too big for him. That's the kind of thing decision makers watch closely. Not highlight throws, but operational command. And just as important, the reaction around the performance exploded online. Fan clips spread fast. Commentators started revisiting their earlier takes. Buzz started stacking. Not proof, but momentum. But let's keep this grounded and responsible. Exhibition performance does not automatically equal regular season dominance. That leap is never guaranteed. Plenty of players shine in showcase formats and struggle when defensive coordinators start scheming specifically for them. Still, perception matters in the NFL ecosystem. Front offices feel it, locker rooms feel it, fan bases feel it, and media narratives accelerate it. What the Pro Bowl showing did was simple but powerful. It removed doubt about whether he belongs on the stage. That question got answered loudly. And once that question disappears, the next one gets much more serious. Not can he play, but when does he take over? And that's exactly where the pressure started turning up behind the scenes. Here's something casual fans often underestimate. When a respected veteran speaks up about a quarterback, people inside the building listen differently than the public does. Not louder, deeper. Because locker rooms run on credibility, not press releases. Coaches can hold podiums. Executives can issue statements. But player endorsements carry a different kind of weight, especially when they come from elite, established leaders. When a defensive cornerstone publicly signals belief in a young quarterback, that's not just commentary, that's cultural positioning. It tells teammates, I trust this guy's direction. And that kind of signal quietly influences how huddles form, how effort aligns, and how patience is granted during growing pains. But let's keep this properly framed. Player support does not equal a final decision. It's influence, not authority. Quarterback depth charts are still decided by coaching staff and front office leadership. Always. Still, influence shapes environment, and environment shapes opportunity. There's also a practical football reason veterans tend to rally behind young QBs they believe in. Defensive leaders know exactly how hard it is to carry a team when the offense can't move. When they see traits that suggest offensive stability, timing, courage in the pocket, command, they react early. And reports, interviews, and fan discussion suggest that belief is forming. But again, that remains interpretation, not official declaration. Another thing worth noticing, no strong internal pushback has surfaced publicly. In real quarterback controversies, you usually see subtle division, anonymous quotes. We'll see tones, hesitation. That hasn't clearly emerged here in reported coverage or public interviews. Instead, the tone sounds cautiously supportive. That matters, because silence from veterans can signal doubt, but early support often signals readiness to rally. Still, this is where smart teams stay disciplined. They don't let hype, internal or external, rush development timelines. They protect the quarterback from being crowned before he's fully built for the weekly grind. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part of this story. The veteran contract reality sitting right in the middle of the room. And that's where the situation gets financially and politically complicated. Now let's step into the part of the story that teams rarely explain clearly, because it's messy, expensive, and full of ego. Quarterback decisions are never just about talent. They're about money, leverage, optics, and timing. When a veteran quarterback carries a massive contract, the organization doesn't just bench a player, they bench an investment. And front offices hate writing off investments publicly, not because of pride alone, but because it signals failure in roster construction. That's something executives try to manage carefully. So when coaches say things like, there will be competition or everyone will get a fair shot, that's often not deception, it's organizational diplomacy. It keeps the building calm. It avoids headlines that explode into controversy. It protects trade value, negotiation leverage, and locker room balance. But here, what makes this situation different? The momentum conversation has clearly shifted toward the younger option in media discussions, fan reactions, and analyst commentary. You can feel it in how people talk about the future versus the past. Still, let's frame this correctly. There is no official announcement naming a long-term starter yet. Any claim that the job is already locked is speculation, not fact. What we're seeing is directional momentum, not a finalized decision. And smart franchises move carefully here for 3 reasons. First, young quarterbacks develop unevenly. Early flashes don't always equal sustained performance. Teams want to see consistency under pressure, not just highlight throws and exhibition success. Second, veterans still matter in quarterback rooms. Even if they're not the long-term answer, they can stabilize preparation habits and weekly process. That role has value. Third, public narratives can turn fast. The same voices calling a rookie the future today can call him not ready after 2 rough games. Teams try not to build plans around emotional swings. But here where it gets interesting. When a franchise starts structuring messaging around opportunity, visibility, and future language, that's usually a sign of transition planning already underway behind closed doors. And what happened at the Pro Bowl and around recent media appearances may have accelerated that timeline more than people realize. Because the spotlight didn't just find him, it stayed on him. And that changes how quickly decisions get made. Here, where the temperature of this entire situation really changed, and it wasn't a regular season snap. It wasn't a preseason drive. It wasn't even a training camp report. It was the Pro Bowl stage. Now let's keep this grounded and fair. Pro Bowl formats are lighter, faster, and far less physical than real NFL games. Nobody smart evaluates quarterbacks purely off that environment. But what the Pro Bowl does reveal is comfort level, processing speed, touch, rhythm, and stage presence. And those traits translate anywhere. What stood out wasn't just the throws, it was the composure. Reports and broadcast reactions focused on how calm he looked cycling through reads, how decisive his release timing was, and how naturally he handled the spotlight environment. That's the part scouts quietly care about, not the box score, but the behavioral indicators. Quarterback evaluation people often call this stage gravity. Some players shrink when attention spikes, others stabilize. A few actually sharpen. Observers suggested he looked like the third type, but again, that's analyst interpretation, not official grading. The media reaction is what amplified everything. When analysts, commentators, and former players start repeating the same phrases, poised, natural, belongs, looks ready, that creates narrative momentum. Narrative momentum doesn't decide depth charts, but it absolutely shapes public expectation and organizational pressure. And the league itself leaned into the moment. Coverage volume matters. Camera time matters. Feature segments matter. When a player becomes a focal point of event storytelling, it signals perceived star trajectory or, at minimum, strong market interest. That doesn't crown a starter, but it does accelerate attention. There's another subtle factor most viewers missed: veteran interaction. Sideline conversations, encouragement, informal teaching moments caught on mic. Those are signals of peer acceptance forming. Not proof of status, but proof of integration. And integration comes before leadership. But here's the twist most hype videos ignore. Moments like that raise expectations, and raised expectations create a different kind of pressure, not from critics, from believers. And belief can be heavier than doubt. Because now the question isn't, can he develop? It's something much more demanding. It's this: can he carry it when it counts? And that's where the real test begins, not on showcase fields, but inside a full season grind. Now we reach the part most hype videos skip, the part where excitement meets reality. Because once momentum builds around a young quarterback, the next phase isn't celebration, it's evaluation under stress. And stress reveals truth fast. Training camp reps, preseason decision-making, install speed, protection calls, third down processing. That's where quarterback roles are actually decided. Not interviews, not Pro Bowl buzz, not viral clips. The daily grind is the real filter. Coaches look for three things during this phase. First, command of the system. Can he call it clean in the huddle, adjust protections, recognize disguised looks, and get everyone aligned without panic? That's leadership in quarterback language. Second, mistake response. Not whether mistakes happen, they always do, but how fast the reset happens. Does one bad throw turn into three, or does the next series look sharper? Third, teammate gravity. Do players naturally rally around him between plays? That's not something you can fake. Locker rooms sense authenticity quickly. Reports and interviews suggest belief is growing, but belief has to survive contact with adversity. And adversity is guaranteed. Defenses will adjust. Film will circulate. Weaknesses will be tested repeatedly. That's when early promise either stabilizes or cracks. Every young quarterback goes through that trial window, no exceptions. This is also where coaching alignment matters more than talent. Scheme fit, play caller trust, protection design, those factors can accelerate development or stall it. Quarterbacks don't grow in isolation, they grow in systems. Which is why the head coach's handling of this rollout will matter as much as the player's performance. Slow build or fast launch, safety net or sink or swim. Different staffs choose different paths. Right now, the public narrative is racing ahead. But buildings move slower than headlines. And that gap between hype speed and development speed is where quarterback stories either become legends or cautionary tales. So the real question is whether the spotlight arrived. It's whether the foundation is ready to hold it. And that answer won't come from microphones. It'll come from snaps. When you strip away the hot takes, the fan wars, the contract drama, and the off-season noise, Garrett's statement isn't really about controversy. It's about direction. Not a declaration, not an official depth chart change, a direction. Veteran defensive leaders don't usually volunteer quarterback opinions unless they feel a shift coming. They tend to stay neutral publicly and supportive privately. So when a respected cornerstone speaks with visible confidence about a young quarterback getting his shot, it signals belief, not finality, but belief. And belief inside a locker room is often the first domino. Still, let's keep this grounded and responsible. A supportive quote does not name a starter. A Pro Bowl performance does not guarantee season success. Fan momentum does not override coaching evaluation. The NFL has humbled plenty of next big things before. Development is never automatic. But signals matter. Right now, the signals line up like this. The fan base energy is leaning young. The media narrative is leaning future. Veteran voices sound increasingly supportive. Organizational messaging sounds transitional, not defensive. That combination usually appears when a franchise is preparing to turn the page, even if they haven't said it out loud yet. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway here. This isn't about replacing one quarterback with another overnight. It's about a franchise slowly repositioning its identity from sunk cost survival mode to forward-looking growth mode. If the young quarterback earns it in camp, earns it in prep, earns it in preseason, the runway is there. If not, the team still has layers of protection built into the plan. That's how smart transitions work. No coronations, no panic, just progression. So the real meaning behind Garrett's words is the decision is made. It's this. The door is open, and everyone in the building knows who it's opening for. And what happens next won't be decided by quotes, it'll be decided by snaps.